You guys can say hi. So I already started this video. Say hi.
Hi. Hey.
Nice. So there's the class that I started the video in. See them up there. Hey. And back down. All right. So let's talk about interphase a little bit. Interphase is the first, it's not even really a stage of mitosis. What it really is this normal cell, normal activity. So the biggest thing you got to think about when you think about interphase is that that's what the cell's normally doing. So when you look at just any cell and you see it in its typical, there's a normal cell, gosh, there's a nice little nucleus. I feel like Bob Ross right now. Oh, there we go. Put a little pretty nucleus in here. Oh, how about a little sparkling little... When you see that cell, that was a Golgi apparatus I was trying to put in there. That is typically what a cell is. And that cell is an interphase. Okay, so normal functions. The cell will spend about 2/3 of its life. So you got to write that about 2/3 of the time in that. Remember, this whole thing is a cycle. So for majority of the time, if I'm writing this and I'd want to put this somewhere in my notes, that's interphase right here. And then we're going to get in these stages here. This is mitosis. You got prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. But 2/3 of the time, it's in this interphase stage. And what happens in there? Okay, so there's some things that we need to know that happen in this stage. I'm going to write them up right now. So one of the first things, right when we get done with cell division, ribosomes and mitochondria are going to reproduce. Why is that? Well, ribosomes obviously are important to make proteins. So we got to make some proteins. You know, basically we just, in this process, divide about half of those out. We got to make mitochondria to power. So the first two things right here in interphase, right in the early phase, we're going to be making some ribosomes. We're also going to be making some centrioles. And the DNA also doubles. That's something I didn't add in here. Your DNA doubles. Okay? So that all happens during interphase. What else is happening? The cell does normal functions. Whatever a nerve cell does, what nerve cells do, a skin cell does, what skin cells do. They're doing their normal functions, okay? So they're just getting ready to kind of divide if necessary. Midway through interphase, we're going to actually have our chromosomes and our DNA replicate. So another thing that happens, DNA replicates. In other words, it makes an exact copy of itself. We're not able to see this occurring, but we are aware through chemical tests that during interphase it's happening. Why can't we see it? If you were to look at the cell, the nucleus just looks like a big blur. You can't see anything happening, but in here, in this section, it is doubling. So interphase, towards the end, it will have two sets of chromosomes, okay? After it gets done with this interphase, after it gets done with interphase, it's going to enter into this phase that we call mitosis. Okay, mitosis is the process which chromosomes are replicated and divided into equal daughter cells. Together, interphase and meiosis makes up the cell. 2/3 of the time, we're going to be spinning an interphase, and then we're going to be in prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So the cell cycle consists of that interphase, normal cell functions, and mitosis. And mitosis consists of 4 stages. They are prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, or telophase. They happen in this particular order. So you got to memorize that order. I always like to remember this as PMAT. Easiest way to remember it, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. One of the things that your book doesn't really cover a little bit, but we're going to talk about is this process called cytokinesis. And cytokinesis is just the doubling of the rest of the cell parts. So we're going to talk about that. Your book doesn't have too much information, but we'll cover that. When we are done with this mitosis, we are going to get done with it and head right back into interphase, normal cell functions. So here's that interphase 2/3 of the time. That's what we're doing. And depending on the cell, some cells will be in interphase for a lot longer than others. So we'll kind of look at that. I'll have an image of what this kind of looks like. So here's the two diagrams that I have to kind of show this. On the upper left-hand side, we see here's from here to here, from here to here. That's interphase, 2/3 of the time. And then this stage up here is meiosis, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. You can see it. It is a cycle, meaning the cell is going to constantly do it. Okay, it's in one of these phases. This diagram over here just shows the different phases. Notice in interphase, normal cell functions. It looks like a typical cell, nucleus, all the parts. Then these are the actual images of what the different stages look like. Notice how different each one looks like, okay? So what is prophase? Prophase is the first stage of this process. And what we're going to need to do is we get this nucleus. So in this image right here, this is a good normal cell in interphase. And it has this nuclear membrane, which is doing its job, protecting the nucleus. The first thing we need to do in this is break that down. So we're going to break down the nuclear membrane. Okay, so in other words, the nucleolus disintegrates. So basically what happens in prophase, the big things that you'll need to write down. Nucleolus, that's that little darkly stained area right there. Okay, let me point that out. Right, here's a good example. There's another good example. Right there. That nucleolus breaks apart. Okay, the nuclear membrane also breaks apart. That's the outer protective layer of the nucleus. And the centrioles start moving away. And that's only in animal cells. Only in animal cells starts to occur. So the points I just pointed out, the nucleolus, that is right there, is starting to break apart. Excuse me, is breaking apart. The chromosomes become visible. That's them in there. And the nuclear membrane breaks apart. Okay, all those things that we just said, centrioles are starting to move to opposite sides. Once again, here is an image of this. Normal cell happening right here. That's an interphase. These two cells, here and here, those are prophase. Okay, now some textbooks will make it a lot more complicated than that. You don't need to do it. Those are good examples of each one of those stages. Metaphase is the next one. And when I think of metaphase, what I think of, there's that M. M could stand for, if you ever remember Sesame Street, C is for cookie and it's good enough for me, right? I can't believe I just did that. But anyways, M is for middle. Okay, that's what I think of when I look at this. Why? Look at this right here, right in the middle. You see the chromosomes are lining up there in the middle, ready to be separated out. But metaphase is the second stage, and what happens in this stage is that we actually get some lining up of the chromosomes in the middle. They move towards the middle of the cell, getting ready for division. And they line up along the equatorial plane. I'm going to type that up here so you can see how to spell it. Equatorial plane. Chromosomes line up in the middle. So in the middle of the cell is this imaginary line, the equatorial plane, and that is right where they're lining up. Okay? Metaphase, all you would have to do to describe it, chromosomes line up in the middle. Here are several images of this occurring. Now, what I want you to do is take a look at that left-handed, the picture in the top left corner. Which cell is it actually in metaphase? So just pause it right now. Look at all those cells. Which cell looks like the chromosomes are lining up? If you guessed that one, you are correct. That's the cell in metaphase. Okay? Just like that one's in metaphase, right there. And so is that one. Chromosomes are lining up in the middle. Okay? And that demonstrates here. What's that plane called? Equatorial plane. The next phase is anaphase. Okay? Anaphase is the third stage of mitosis. And what happens here is the centromeres will split and the sister chromatids separate. Okay, the sister chromatids are going to separate. The chromosomes are going to be literally pulled from opposite ends of the cell. Okay? And during this process, cytokinesis begins, cell membrane pinches in, and in animals, okay, there's going to be an actual pinching in. So here's a normal cell. During this, you're going to start to see the cell shaped kind of like this. It's being pinched in the middle, kind of pinched in the middle, here and here and here. It's pinching in, okay? And the chromosomes that had previously lined up in the middle are now being separated and pulled apart. How they're pulled apart, a lot of times we see them when they're in the middle, they look like an X, like this, but they're not an X like that. Notice how I drew it, like a normal X, but they're actually like, that's one chromosome, and the other one is like that. And so when we do it like that, what you'll end up seeing is that's what's getting pulled apart. So this one is going to go in that direction, this red one's going to go here, okay? So this is kind of the process. Now in plants can't pull apart like this. So what they do is they have developed what we call a cell plate. They start doing this, and they keep adding these little material, and they keep adding on top of each other until eventually, as they keep adding, it's going to create a nice new wall. And that's how they separate. That begins in anaphase. It begins. Doesn't end in anaphase. It begins. So the word cytokinesis, okay, cytokinesis is cell division. It starts in anaphase. That's a good question to think about. When does cytokinesis occur? It starts in anaphase. Classic cells doing anaphase. Here, notice they're getting pulled apart, like fingers getting separated. Okay, they're pulling apart right there. Okay, getting pulled apart. Here's all the chromosomes getting pulled. Some there, some there. These are getting pulled this way, that way, and so on. This is a typical anaphase. Those chromosomes are being separated. Another image showing this, just how they're getting separated. Okay. Notice the cell is elongating. It's elongating in this process. It's getting longer, and eventually it's going to start to pinch in. So it's going to kind of pinch in like this. It's going to keep doing it even more and even more until eventually we get two new cells. The fourth and final stage of mitosis is called telophase. During this, I'll tell you kind of what's happening, what the final things that happen. So cytokinesis is complete. The nuclear membrane reforms. The nucleolus reappears. The chromatin unwind and chromosomes disappear. So write those things down. One of the things that I want to point out during this is notice we've heard of these things before. If you think back, or if you look at your notes over prophase, it's literally telophase can be looked at as the opposite of prophase. It's the opposite of prophase, okay? Because in prophase, the nuclear membrane broke apart, the nucleolus disappeared, and the chromosomes formed. Now that's the opposite effect. Great. Oh, these are just great examples of telophase. Oh, look at that thrill. Sorry, I got a little Jimmy Kruger on you. But if you look at these, great examples of telophase. Cells are dividing. Notice that pinching. They're almost completely individual. A little bit left here, but they're separated. They're two cells. This is the last stage. It's the opposite of prophase. Cytokinesis, the dividing of the cell, is finished during this stage. Another example. Now, some books actually make this a little bit bigger. I would have a little bit more pinching going on here, more reforming, all those things that we talked about. And then the term cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is literally the division of the cytoplasm and the cell's content. So mitochondria, some ribosomes, Golgi apparatus, rough ER, smooth ER, lysosomes, peroxisomes, that kind of stuff. It's complete when two new daughter cells are completed. Okay. At the end of the day, this is the cell cycle. Okay. The replication of the chromosomes ensures that each daughter cell will get a copy of the genetic information, okay, the genetic code. Separation of each double chromosome during anaphase guarantees each daughter cell will receive only one copy of the chromosome. That's what's happening here. If we do this right, we make sure that each of our new cells each have all the right material, and they're identical. So mitosis, what does it do? It produces two identical daughter cells. Make sure you remember that. Mitosis produces two identical daughter cells, because when we compare that to meiosis next time, you're going to see meiosis is not going to do that. Okay, it's not going to do that. All right, that's basically all I got. I'm going to put up here your homework, what I want you to do once you have this information. Now, always be reading the chapter, especially this part about mitosis and meiosis. Make sure you have a good understanding of the parts of the process. Okay, so your homework. Your homework. I will type it up now. So your homework for next time. Read pages 168 and 181 in your book. Mainly the parts over prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Define the terms and answer questions 1, 2, and 3 on page 181. Then draw the phases of mitosis. The best way to do that, I'd make a little box, label it, and then draw what it looks like. Okay? And do that for all 5. All right. God bless America. Hope you all have a great Halloween and you get all you want and all the candy. And I'll see you in class either Friday or Monday. God bless America.